Welcome today. I'm glad to see you all here on such a warm day. So, first of all, again, welcome to Rotary. I'd like those people who have visitors to stand up with the visitor and introduce them. So, if you have a visitor, please stand up.
Hi, I'm Lori Paulson. My guest today is Meredith Savy with Union Grove Farms.
So the couple of announcements I have. So first of all of you silence your phone, like me, right now. So that button on the top, just push it until it's red. If it's already red and turns white, then push it again. Let's silence. Secondly, remember that clean up after yourself. That way, it takes you all seconds to do that. And then we have bins for each of your items, so put the proper thing in the proper bin. Paper plates go in the bin and leave those in the way. Right? So, this morning at 8:30, I returned from an Odyssey trip to Rome. It took me about 35 hours just of being awake the whole time. I was driving. I did not take a train, but I took a plane and a car to get home and drive home last night through the night from DC, thanks to the weather. But thankfully I had my wife to help me. But while there, like we did visit several places, the Vatican was one of them. And while I was at the Vatican, I started thinking, I learned about some jobs. So let me just, here we go. At the Vatican, there's a person whose job is just to keep the keys. He's called the key holder. He has over 1,000 keys. Every morning, he opens St. Pius Cathedral and also the Sistine Chapel you can see here, but also every other building where he's responsible for it. He may have a team of people. I think that's an interesting job. I think probably other people can do that. Maybe it can be electronic. There's also a tapestry master. And anytime you see the Pope, I don't know if you've noticed the Pope on TV, or even seen him in person, there are some beautiful tapestries, and you might go, well, that's outside, leather, those are not authentic. But in fact, they are. The tapestry master is responsible for making sure each of the tapestries is properly held. They manage them. If any of them tear slightly, that's horrible, but they have to repair them while doing it. So the next time you see the Pope and you see something behind it, that's probably a 500-year-old piece of also ornamental things, and this person's responsible. So that got me thinking about what other jobs are unique, because honestly, a tapestry master, I think it's an interesting job. So, and if you know me, I don't like doing work, honestly. I don't want to just do it. I'd rather you guys do it. So here are 3 jobs. These are ancient jobs. And I want you to tell me which one is real. So the first one is a knocker. And that's the person that was responsible for tapping on the window in the morning. An ash tap was a person who would go from house to house and get the ash from the fireplace to make soap. And a bed warmer boy is, any of you ever really wanted a warm bed? Not right now, but so what do you think? Which only one of these is a real job? Which one? Three. Yeah, before alarm clocks. How are you going to get up? You hire someone to shoot a piano, or to tap on your window, as you see here. Here's another one, driving. So in the early days, there's a person who was a tollist, where it makes sense, right? You come close to a toll, we don't have phones. So this person would whistle to say, hey, someone's coming, over the bridge. There's a flagman. That person was responsible for walking 60 meters in front of the car, waving a red flag to warn people in the town that there's a car coming. Or a mile marker. That's the pace of the car. What do you think? 1, 2, or 3?
2.
One. It's actually 2. And I love that there's a stoker, because this law was written when steam engines were still a thing, and so when you came into certain towns, you had to hire a flagman, a driver, and a stoker to stoke the engine, although, of course, they didn't need engine stokers, so the person strode beside the driver, and you can see that person here. Here's another one. So ancient factories, not ancient to me maybe, they would hire someone to do one of these special jobs. So a spittoon monitor to monitor the spittoons, make sure they didn't overflow. That would be pretty gross. Lip boy crawls underneath the things to take out the lip. And a factory lecturer, who's a person that sits on a sort of bench and reads because he wants to work without noise like that. What are your thoughts?
All three.
Who's saying three so enthusiastic?
I say all three.
You say all three.
I say all three.
That's the answer my daughter said, so I want to qualify that these are the ones that you actually got paid for. And you can see, in fact, it was a factory lecturer. He would do this famously in cigar factories. One last ancient one. So if I were wealthy and had a garden, or a wealthy estate, I might choose to hire a maze warden, someone to help guide people through the maze if you got lost. An ornamental hermit, someone just to live on the property to make it feel like more natural. Or in fact, a follow watcher. What do you think? One, two?
Two.
It is in fact two. You would hire a hermit to live on your property to do that. So ancient jobs. That's okay. So I'm like, yeah, weren't they crazy even before our generation? Literally live on the property to give it atmosphere. Yeah. Also, the person who had some money. But there are actually some unusual current jobs, like this. So if someone dies in your family in certain countries, you might hire a grief letter writer, a professional mourner, someone who just there to cry at the funeral, or someone to help you learn to smile at your wedding. Great. What do you think? Three? I know my daughter said three. It's two. Yeah, there are people that you can hire to cry, which I will probably have to do, honestly. I hope, that's half my will would be to hire a really big job. Have a little fuss. Here's another job that I love. So on trains, any of you ever sort of gone on a train or a plane? So the person could wake you up. If it's get tights to get in, so there's a person called a train pusher to push people into the train, and then a strap sanitizer. Cleans the straps, which honestly I love doing. What do you think? 1, 2, or 3? Two. How do you guys know two so much? I haven't heard even one version. Yes, in fact, it is a train pusher. And anyone feeling claustrophobic, I would avoid Tokyo, Japan, where these people are people that are there. Just a couple more. These are also, we actually have stories about these on that Times website. So pole divers are people that dive off poles to spear fish. Still fish are people that sit on sticks, literally constructed for hours to fish, catch fish. Surf spear people, spear men, because mostly men do it, stand chest deep water in the breakers. And these are paid jobs. What do you think? 1, 2, or 3?
1.
Well, it's 2. Still fishermen. Look at these. They sit for hours on these sticks. They're figure fours. And the position in me goes Y or Y triangle. That's another problem. Just one more. So these are 3 jobs you could still do today. One is a shipbreaker. Anyone ever watched Love Boat?
Yeah.
So if a shipbreaker would take apart the Love Boat, they just drive it up to the beach and pull it apart. A tunnel scrubber. So if you've been in the tunnel, well, this tunnel needs some cleaning. This person is a person who's individually gets paid to clean the tunnel. Or a crane greaser, a person who climbs up on the crane to grease it. Yeah, that's what I said all about. And I think this is like only a paid position. It's one shipbreaking happens in Chittagong. So if you ever want to see something amazing, watching them drive a ship onto the beach, it's pretty remarkable. Also, notice their safety equipment. It's a pretty interesting thing. So Google shipbreaking Chittagong. And a lot of our conversations, I have both my daughters who are, in their late 20s, early 30s, and we talked a lot about AI and concerns about AI taking your job. And if you are worried that AI might take your job, remember, you can be a shipbreaker, a professional mourner, a train pusher, or you may choose to do what I do, and that's be a couch surfer. That's it. So let me tell you, if you have couch surf this week, any, you owe the fine us. So please.
That was good.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad. That was hilarious. Good afternoon, Rotarians. It's good to see Linda and Jim highly. Seeing them and seeing that they are recovering and doing well and actually showing up. So thank you for coming today. Randy, you have an announcement?
Hello, everybody. Quick, very important announcement. On your table, we have two really good events coming up. One is on June 25th. That is David's installation banquet. If you have not RSVP'd already, please, if you want to do it today, just sign up. If you're going to do it online, you can just email me if that's the easiest thing to do. You don't have to go to the invitation. But you must RSVP, or if you have RSVP'd and you can't make it, we need to know by Tuesday. And if you have any questions, you can just send me an email or give me a call. Our next very important event. You know, next week is Felix's last meeting. And after the meeting, get ready for Felix Palooza at Heel and Horn, so we can toast him off to the owner committee.
Yeah.
So, thanks, everybody.
Randy, joining a committee sounds like a demotion.
No.
For the installation, just a reminder that members and their guests don't pay anything. So the installation is a free event. It's no payment. And with that, I'd like to call Lorenzo. Okay, before Lorenzo, Steve, you have an announcement?
I have an announcement about one of our long-term members.
You're not up in front, if you don't mind.
To make an announcement about one of our long-term members, Bob Ward. I have good news and bad news about Bob. I'm going to tell you the bad news first is that this morning in a phone conversation, Duke Energy announced that he was deceased. Good news, though, is that the person who heard this was Bob when he called to make a change to his account. He was told that he was deceased. Apparently, when before his mom passed away, he had gotten on an account with her, and I guess when one of us goes, we all go. Anyway, Bob should be back next week.
Thank you, Steve. We'll go with the good news only. Now, Lorenzo, we have a special youth program presentation. So, Lorenzo.
Hi, everybody. So, good afternoon. You know, while I'm contemplating, and maybe many of you, a long, hot summer in Chapel Hill, there are some folks who are going to be going to amazing places and doing amazing things. And I'm delighted to reintroduce our friend Claire Frickless, who is going to be going to Finland. She's a student here in Chapel Hill. And her, let's call it exchange sister, Ava, I apologize for that, but Ava who's going to talk to us a little bit about her home country, Finland. So please come here and say hi, guys. Talk close to the mic, please. I have a big voice, but I need you guys to be close. So, Ava, just to start, what town are you from? Do you have brothers and sisters? What do you want to do when you're here visiting the United States?
Yeah, I'm Paula and I'm from Finland. I live in a town called Hämeenlinna. It's pretty close to Helsinki, the capital, and in Hämeenlinna there's about 70,000 people. And I have a little brother, and he's 15 years old.
Things you want to do.
One year I'd like to see the American culture and then visit the beach and just meet new people and try new foods.
Are you getting close to going to college? Are you near college age in your country? And if so, what do you want to do? What are you thinking of studying?
I have one more year at the school and then I graduate, and I like to study medicine.
Medicine, very good, very good. Claire, you have your guests here for how long? Tell us about the exchange. Tell us about what you want to do locally to show how the chapel built.
She's here for 2.5 weeks. We've already had a lot of fun. We've been to the pool, we went to a concert on Wednesday night. I showed her my friends and stuff, so kind of just more of whatever I do in the summer. And then next week we're going to the beach, so that'll be fun. Yeah.
What do you want to do in Finland? Or what have you asked Ava to make it available for you?
Yeah.
Possibly.
I'm excited to see like the lakes and the scenery. She has a summer cottage that I'm excited to go to, meet her friends, try her food.
Well, that sounds great. Now, we have one last question, Ava. What is your connection to Rotary? Do you have a family member in Rotary, or are you just connected because you met someone? How does that work?
There was this message that came and it said if you want to work in summer exchange, and I chose to visit something.
Okay. Well, good for us and good for you. Well, good. And Ava has a flag from the club that sponsored her, so we'll do a flag.
This is our flag.
One last thing, Claire's mom, Betsy, is here, so Betsy, thank you for letting me. Make this available to your daughter. Thank you for hosting this.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And I'm going to call upon Jim Hefner to introduce our guest.
Well, she is not here today. Wonderful Jennifer Player made this program today. I'm sorry that she got here. It's sort of a two-part series. I'll stay with you. Well, we're going to need a lot of wisdom here today because we all have not supply and demand. According to Redfin, Chapel Hill's median home price was $355,000 10 years ago. It's $650,000 today, up 80%. While the Census Bureau says median income in Chapel Hill was $80,000 10 years ago, it's now $85,000, up only 6%. So I always looked at the wisdom of the ages, and I found that the great philosopher Yogi Berra would say about Chapel Hill housing, a nickel ain't worth a dime anymore here. And it's hard to find a home in this town for the median wage. So to explain what all of this means, you can see from her biography on the table, and what you can see in the scuttlebutt. The most qualified experts in these parts of what we have here to tell us about it. And I would like for you to please welcome another great pride in Keenan Flagman, Sarah Dickerson.
talking a little bit about local economic growth, what we're doing well, some challenges we're facing, and what we can do to sustain growth going forward. And I do tend to wander, so I apologize to anyone watching on YouTube. Okay, so I tend to think of our local economy through the lens of the Keenan Institute's American Growth Project, which essentially is just forecasting GDP, employment growth, and housing permit growth for 150 extended metro areas across the country. So when I say extended metro areas, what I mean is microeconomies, or economically interconnected regions that happen to share labor pools and supply chains. So we have an example here to the right of the screen. This is the Raleigh-Durham extended metro area, the triangle. And as you can see here, there are 2 MSAs in our extended metro area. We have the Raleigh-Cary MSA and then the Durham-Chapel Hill MSA, but we also include some of the surrounding counties that are contributing to our local economy. So why did we do all of this? Why did we create all 150 extended metro areas? Well, anyone who's familiar with the census knows that they have MSAs, they have CSAs, but we didn't feel like these were comprehensive understandings of local microeconomies. So we wanted to develop something that was more holistic, more comprehensive, and so the extended metro areas were born. All right, so let's dive into how we are doing here in the triangle relative to the 50 largest extended metro areas by population size. So spoiler alert, we're doing pretty well. So compared to the 50 largest, we are 4th in GDP growth, 4th in employment growth. Is this a clicker that I can use to? Sorry. And then in housing permit growth, we are 11th. So across the board, we are doing pretty well. In fact, I would say that there aren't any other extended metro areas who are doing this well across all of these different indicators. So let's dive into this into a little more depth. So on the screen, I have our 5 fastest and slowest growing metro areas among the 50 largest, again, by population size. Now for the 5 fastest growing, I would say there are a few trends that jump out here. The first of which is you're going to see the San Francisco Bay Area, and you're going to see Seattle. These are 2 tech hubs that have a lot of AI investment coming in. And as we know, AI investment is currently driving GDP growth. Now beyond that, thank you. Beyond that, we also have Austin, Salt Lake City, Raleigh-Durham. These are all based in the south, or I would say south adjacent maybe, for Salt Lake City. Now the idea here, the trend that I want to point out, is that a lot of Americans relocated to mid-sized cities, tech hubs during the pandemic. They left the big expensive cities behind and they went to places like Austin, Raleigh-Durham, for example. Nashville just missed that top 5, but that's another good example. Now the 5 slowest growing. Here you might note that each of these has some reliance on manufacturing. Now manufacturing is an important sector. It's also a productive sector, but it is not adding a lot of jobs right now. Now all of that said, each of these has that opportunity to improve its standing. I look at Detroit, for example, and it had Michigan Central Station laying vacant for decades. Now Ford and Google have moved in. Amazon is expanding its presence there, and Detroit has moved up the rankings over the past 2 years. So all of that to say, this isn't static. Even for us, Raleigh-Durham, we're going to want to figure out how we can maintain our position toward the top of this grouping. Yes.
Good question. Sorry if you've already answered this, but what period of time does this cover?
Yeah, so this is our forecast. Sorry, can you see this? This is our forecast for move on to employment growth. So here you'll see that Sunbelt cities are outperforming. Now Sunbelt, not everyone is familiar with this term, but it's basically everything you see in yellow here. And they are outperforming in employment growth for a few reasons. First of all, the South is going to be more affordable than many cities up north. These also happen to be further inland than a lot of the expensive coastal hubs. Beyond that, I mentioned that we had talent pouring into the Southeast and the Southwest during the pandemic. So a lot of people moving to this region, a lot of people interested in working there. Beyond that, many of these cities that you see up here have a more business-friendly environment than, let's say, LA, for example, or maybe Boston or New York City. So what sets us apart, right? We're in the top 5. We're doing really well. Why is that the case? Well, I alluded to this already, but we have a lot of population growth here, right? We are one of the country's fastest growing metro areas. In fact, we created this map here to show net migration share for 2025, and this accounts for both inflows and outflows. And we are 7th among the 50 largest extended metro areas for net migration share. So that tells me that not only do we have a lot of inflows, people moving to this area, we also don't have many outflows. So most people, when they get here, they're like me, they want to stick around. They think this is a pretty great place to be. I think we're going to stay. So we have a lot of population growth. And ultimately, this is translating into talent coming into the triangle. So we have talent coming in, but we also have this homegrown talent as well from our local universities, UNC, Duke, NC State. And all of that translates into a high concentration of PhDs. We have one of the highest in the country. We also happen to be 6th in tech talent. Now when I say tech talent, I mean having a bachelor's or higher in high tech. Why does that even matter? So as you can see here with this graph, there's a positive relationship between the share of the workforce with a bachelor's or higher in high tech and productivity, or output per worker. And we're doing pretty well in this regard. You can see Raleigh-Durham over here in the green dot. We're above the US average. A lot of cities are kind of clustered down here with 2 to 4% of their workforce having a bachelor's or higher in high tech. We're closer to 6.5%, 7%. Now, one thing I will say is that we are below this predicted line, like Austin. And what that tells me is that we are not yet as productive as we could be, given the fact that we have all of these highly educated people working in tech. What I would say, though, is that this is likely due to population growth, right? So we've exploded so rapidly, perhaps like Austin, we just haven't figured out how to capitalize on all of that talent yet, or how to leverage all of that talent in a way that translates into productivity. Okay, so why do people come here? What is it that's so great about this area? I mean, all of you have either opted to stay here or come here, so I'm sure you can answer this as well as I can. But first of all, lower cost of living in coastal hubs. So I'm from the DC suburbs. My friends were shocked that I could buy a home in my mid-30s. They were just completely amazed that that was even an option. But if you're from Boston, Philly, DC, this is going to seem very affordable by comparison. Beyond that, we have corporate investment pouring in, which means higher paying jobs. And I heard the statistic about the median income, but that was just Chapel Hill specifically, right? So we have corporate investment pouring into the triangle more broadly. So realistically speaking, there are a lot of higher paying jobs here, and we have that alongside the lower cost of living. So that ends up equating to a pretty good quality of life. to amenities, right? We have our shops, we have our restaurants, we have green spaces, and we have this fantastic academic ecosystem, right? So world-class universities, if you want to work at the Research Triangle Park, there are the tech firms, the life science companies. Essentially, if you are a smart person who wants to be around other smart people, this is a really great place to be. So what else sets us apart? I've talked a little bit about this already, but productivity, right? So I mentioned that this is output per worker, and you may or may not be interested in how this is calculated, but essentially I'm just taking the GDP share for each sector and dividing it by the employment share for that sector to get productivity, and then repeating that across 150 cities. So what we see when we look up at this table is in finance and real estate, we are very productive, more productive than the national average and than Austin. In manufacturing, also way more productive. I think part of that likely has to do with pharmaceuticals. Trade and transportation, we are below Austin, but still ahead of the US average. So we could do a deep dive into any of these sectors. Like I said, pharmaceuticals likely explains part of what's happening in manufacturing. But what I will say is that a lot of this does have to do with our talent, right? Driving that productivity, that output of the worker. But what about challenges? What are some challenges to sustaining this growth? We're doing really well, but we want to sustain our growth. Well, first of all, anytime you have this population explosion like we've had, it's going to mean infrastructure strain. It's going to be hard on the roads, the water systems, the sewer systems. And beyond that, you're going to start to see cost pressures rise, right? It's going to become more expensive. This is especially true when it comes to housing affordability. In this area, in the Triangle, housing affordability is a real challenge, and it is especially pronounced in Orange County. So I will talk about that more in just a minute. So at the Keenan Institute, we wanted to develop a way to measure this financial burden of buying a home for the median household across all 100 of North Carolina's counties. So we developed this housing affordability index, and this was part of our North Carolina economic forecasting initiative. So we're aiming to provide these forecasts that are targeting sustained, broad-based growth in the state of North Carolina. Now, this index was led by two of my colleagues, Kyle Henson, Scott Adams, and they've written a really nice piece that's on our website if anyone's interested in all that went into developing this index. But what I think you need to know, just for the purposes of this presentation, it accounts for home prices, mortgages, and income. And what do we see? All right, so housing affordability for single-family homes. The darker red, orange color is going to indicate lower affordability. Green is going to mean higher affordability. And as you can see here, it is not as affordable out west in the mountains, along the coast, and right here in the Triangle. Now, there is more affordability, I would say, in some of the more rural parts of our state. But let's take a minute to look at the most affordable, the 5 most affordable, and then the 5 least affordable. So if you look at the most affordable, 4 out of 5 of these are going to be in the same geographic area, the same region of North Carolina, right here, in this northeastern part of the state. Now Jones is a little bit further south, but still in eastern North Carolina. So what's going on there? Well, these are lower income, generally lower income counties, right? And they do tend to be a little more rural. Now we also have our least affordable counties. certainly hard to build on the coast. I think we've all seen the videos of homes getting swept out to sea in the Outer Banks. They also happen to be popular vacation destinations, right? So you do have a lot of people who want to purchase their second homes, their vacation homes in the mountains or along the coast. But then we have Orange County, right here, neck and neck with Dare in terms of affordability. So what the heck is going on here that is making it so unaffordable? And not only are we in the bottom 5 there, we're also the most cost burdened in the research done. Okay, so what is happening is that we have a lot of people who want to live here. It's a very desirable place to live. I would say that's a good thing, right? I mentioned previously, we have this academic ecosystem, we have nice weather, we have access to amenities. If you're from a big expensive city like I am, it's going to seem very affordable by comparison. So this area has a lot going for it, right? So a lot of people want to live here. But at the same time, not a lot of homes are being built. So why is that the case? There are development restrictions in Chapel Hill and Orange County specifically that emphasize land preservation, rural barriers, and low density housing. So we end up with this combination of lots of people want to live here and not a lot of homes are being built. And so the prices go up. Now, you'll also note on this graph, right, that affordability is declining over time. But whenever I see this, I actually think that this is not what I'm most worried about when looking at Orange County, right? Because if we look at the state as a whole, the deceleration that we see during the pandemic, 2021, 2022, that deceleration in affordability, it is so much more pronounced. It is a really steep drop-off in affordability. Now here in Orange County, we've always kind of hovered around this threshold, this 100 line, right? And once we dip below that, that tells us that the median household can no longer afford the median priced home. But we've always kind of been hovering around that line, and that tells me that there are more structural issues in our county in particular, and that for a long time, we've been dealing with the fact that not a lot of homes are being built here. But let's take a look at what's happening statewide, because I think this is really a very important takeaway from this research that we've been doing related to housing affordability. And what we saw was that by the end of 2022, median households could no longer afford median priced homes in the state of North Carolina, which is kind of shocking considering that for a long time this was a very affordable state. So this is due to a combination of things. Like I said, we had so many people relocating to this area. They wanted to live in North Carolina. In fact, it was Texas, Florida, and the Carolinas were the states that received the biggest influx of newcomers during the pandemic. So that's explaining part of what's happening. We also saw inflation climb during that time, and in mid-2022 it peaked. So all of that is contributing to what we see happening during the early parts of the pandemic. Now, conditions have improved a little bit. We know that because affordability is no longer decelerating like it once was. It's kind of just hovering right below that 100 threshold, so right below that affordability mark. So, that is a good thing, right? Rates have eased, demand has eased a little bit, but realistically, affordability is still a challenge. So if you are a low-income household, if you are a first-time home buyer, you still have a down payment that's going to be a really high upfront cost, right? And mortgage rates still constitute a higher share of income than they did 10, 15 years ago. So there's still a lot of barriers to buying homes. What are some of the solutions here? So you may think So first we have expand the supply. And this is a huge one. This needs to happen. This includes building what we call missing middle homes. And that's going to be anything that, in terms of density, falls somewhere between your single-family home and your high-rise apartment complex. So your duplexes, your cottage courts, accessory dwelling units, that's going to be like your guest house in your backyard with the kitchen, the fully equipped kitchen and bathroom. Also converting underused commercial spaces. This is happening to a mall in Durham right now, office spaces that are maybe underused, converting those to residential spaces. And with AI, there are opportunities, there are tools now available to identify properties and determine whether it would be cost effective, whether it would be efficient to convert that into a home. Now, AI can also be used for streamlining approvals, permitting. This can be a really cumbersome part of the development, the construction process. Beyond that, there has to be support for more market-friendly policies. And some of you are likely familiar with this, but Chapel Hill is working on its zoning codes right now. By that I mean everything that kind of determines where housing can be built, what type of housing, under what conditions. So they're working on rewriting that at the moment and focused on allowing more housing types, higher density, essentially everything I've referenced up here, the missing middle housing. So currently under review and hoping for adoption sometime in 2027. All right, so key takeaways. We're doing really well. Our economy is outperforming across a number of economic indicators. There are very few places in this country that are doing this well across the board, across employment, housing, and GDP. Okay, but at the same time, we still want to make sure that we continue to sustain that growth, that we continue to track any of those weak points, any of those challenges that Chapel Hill, Orange County, and the Triangle are facing more broadly. And that's going to mean a few things. Focusing on that continued talent attraction and talent retention, because that's so critical to driving a lot of the growth that we are seeing, especially these past couple of years. And focusing on housing affordability, right? So this is a challenge in this area, but if you think about it, these two are actually connected. If you are a business, you want top talent, that talent, especially recent college grads, they have to be able to afford to live in the community. So in reality, those are connected. So those are a few of the takeaways, but I wanted to open the floor now to questions. So yeah, please feel free to ask.
Hey, thank you for the presentation. So, we talk a lot in this club. We have people who come to talk about the zoning crisis, the building crisis in Chapel Hill. We need to support growth. One approach is to say, we live in a great town, and those of us who happen to live here are the lucky ones, and let's keep it the way it is, because we like it that way, and we pay the taxes to afford it. The other approach is to say you've got to break down some of these impediments so that more people can live here. What's the argument for that approach? Because, you know, a lot of people like it the way it is, and when new things go in, there's traffic, parking is more challenging, there's a lot more congestion, and everyone complains.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And maybe the majority of people who live in this area don't want a lot of new residents coming in. I mean, that's very possible. But what I would say is that if we want to maintain growth, it's very evident to me that a lot of that is being fueled by talent. And talent needs somewhere to live. Now, Wake County, Durham County, they've been building residential spaces at a much faster rate than Orange County. argument that there is going to be space for top talent, they just have to live outside of this county. But what it really comes down to is you have to kind of weigh all of the factors together, because if you do want really highly skilled individuals working for local companies, they need somewhere to live.
In the list of fastest growing, where does Charlotte fall in?
Yeah, Charlotte is high. They're doing well. I have to double check. Let's see. A lot of areas in the U.S. North Carolina are doing fairly well. So as you can see, so this is Charlotte. It's bright green, so not doing quite as well as we are, but definitely I would say at least in the top 20, but I think it's the top 15.
Thank you for an interesting presentation. With the current government regulations on immigration, you mentioned the talent coming in and out. What is the current impact of that, and what do you expect the impact to be in the future?
Oh gosh, how long do we have? Okay. Okay. So this is another topic that is something of great interest to me, and so I've done a lot of research in the immigration space. I just wrote a piece about this. If anyone's interested in understanding how more and more labor laws could impact our local economy in North Carolina, it's not triangle specific, but in North Carolina, I talk about that in this piece that I've just written. It's on our website. So what is the impact likely to be? So just to back up for a second, I will say that between 2024 and 2025, we saw this steep drop-off in net international migration. So fewer people coming to the U.S. for jobs, more people either being forced to leave or leaving of their own accord, self-deportation. So we've seen this dramatic shift in that trend, right around international migration. So what does it mean? What are the impacts? Basically, you have to look at the immigrant-reliant sectors, right? So construction, manufacturing, to a lesser extent, leisure and hospitality, food processing, agriculture. So these are sectors that tend to rely more heavily on foreign-born labor. So the question is, can they continue to produce in these sectors at the same rate if they are missing, let's say, somewhere between 15 to, I think it's 37% of construction workers in the U.S. are foreign-born. So if we're missing such a large share of our workforce, what does that mean? So it's kind of following, the entire line of thinking. What that essentially translates to is employers may need to hire native-born workers instead. There are options for doing that, right? Increasing the number of training programs, for instance. So that's an option to dealing with it. But realistically, it's very likely that with those labor losses that we'll see higher prices. Higher prices in food, groceries, but also in housing. I could talk about this for a long time, so I might just stop there and answer more questions. But it's really fascinating because I think this topic gets such a political spin, but in reality, I look at it through the economic lens and you can't ignore the fact that foreign-born labor was driving our labor force growth in recent years. And you have to account for that when you're thinking about making sure you have the workers you need across many different sectors, actually, just in the years ahead. So that was long-winded, but yes.
A question about entrepreneurship, and you talked about our talent pool in the state, and obviously San Francisco was super high on the productivity, I'm sure for many reasons, but California has a long history of entrepreneurship, and it's the cool place to go to do that stuff. How does North Carolina do in that realm? And are there any programs to promote young people staying
understand training programs, especially at community colleges, and people developing trade skills, and what that type of training might look like. So I can certainly direct you toward them. I will say that yes, I mean, San Francisco, LA even, it's kind of baked into the culture. But at the same time, you know, I was talking about housing affordability. There's now research coming out saying that if housing is super, super expensive and you want to start a business, it's going to be harder, right? Because there are a lot of upfront costs associated with starting a business. So in that respect, in places even like California, where it's baked into the culture, high housing costs can end up being problematic for entrepreneurs.
Thanks again. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks again for your presentation. Do you often have opportunities to share this information with our state legislature just to enlighten them further in terms of, certainly they hopefully have appreciation of GDP growth and economic development and other factors, but obviously you've got a lot of important data points and you've heard a number of questions today. So do you have a chance to present to them, and what actions might they have taken in the past, or do you anticipate they'll take going forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the answer is yes, but it's very early stages. So I mentioned we have this North Carolina Economic Forecasting Initiative, and we have taken some of our data points that you see here today and presented those just as proof of concept to let them know, like, hey, we can do this. If you want to know more about where our state is heading, where it is today, what we can do to maintain our position, this is what we're capable of doing. So we're in the early stages, is how I would describe it, and heading toward that direction of working more closely with them to make sure they have the information available. Yeah.
Hi, I'll try to speak loudly. Thank you very much. Jim's my boss. You mentioned that there is a circle around Orange County in which we cannot build, that's dedicated to land preservation, etc. Can you tell us the geographic areas that encompass this rural buffer?
No, I don't know them. I just know that maybe someone here knows exactly where they are. I'm not aware of, yeah. Did you want to?
Well, I do know, excuse me, I actually live in one.
Oh, you do?
Just south of Morgan Creek, along Mount Carmel, back in there, where Bayberry Drive are very large lots, and that it's rural buffer.
Okay, okay. Did everyone hear that? She's asking about the exact location of the rural buffers, right?
And I was saying I live in one.
Let me make a comment. A great presentation, and a little bit in response to Lorenzo's question about why should we care about the affordability in Chapel Hill. And I saw something yesterday that you're probably quite familiar with. The two things. One is the median income, household income in Cary is $135,000. That's $50,000 more than Chapel Hill. And when you look at the engines that have driven the triangle, certainly UNC, State, and Duke are huge pieces of that. I can't speak to what the faculty salary is like at Duke, but a report that I saw yesterday suggested that comparable institutions, public institutions, pay a third more to their faculty around the country than does UNC Chapel Hill. So when you look at those kind of figures, you say, okay, how are we going to sustain this wonderful life in the next 50 years? We've got to figure out a way to keep those institutions at the forefront of what they do, or it's going to be a case of the goose that lays the golden egg getting killed. And so my question for you, I guess, is you must have data about salaries, things like that. And when you go to the legislature, it's great to look at GDP, but I don't know how you calculate GDP for a history professor, or even for somebody in biochemistry who doesn't hold 15 patents. So let me ask you a little bit about how you're addressing that people come up?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I will say we tend to zoom out a little bit more and look at more, I'd say, macro level indicators. So doing the deep dive into salaries at such a granular level is not something that we're focused on. But that said, you were getting to a really important question about what it is that attracts talent and helps to retain talent. Right now, I am working on a research project that aims to answer that question. And obviously, salary is going to play a role, right? If you have highly skilled individuals and you want to keep them, you want them to continue working for you, you have to pay them what they are worth. You have to address what their value is and compensate them fairly. So that is certainly a factor. It's kind of outside the scope of what we're doing here, but more research is being done now in this space, and I'm looking at what it takes to keep top talent, and that is one of the factors that's going to matter.
You talked about manufacturing. I'm wondering if there's any place in the country that you've seen where manufacturing has improved or you will expect to improve as a result of tariffs.
That's loaded.
Okay. All right. So tariffs and manufacturing. Yeah.
Do you want me to turn this on?
Sure. Yeah.